Hi, everybody. This is 1383. Make sure that everyone can hear me and everything is working right. Okay. Yep. Let's see. Sound check. Sound check. Okay, here we go. All right, 1,383 days since Richard was murdered, and we don't have his remains. We don't have his body. Where is his body? And I just posted something that we have a question here at Team Find Richard Halliday. We have a huge question, and that is, where's Richard's body? And why do we keep asking that? Like if you have an accident that involves flying over an ocean and you're in a plane and you go down in the ocean and you're declared deceased, there's no body, right? You can't recover the body. And I know in Natalie Holloway's case, um, her murderer dumped her into the ocean and there's no body, right? There's no remains. And, we understand that. Um, but right now with Richard being, on Fort Bliss, right? All the cameras, y'all. You're talking about Fort Bliss military installation. They have so many cameras. And then, of course, we have the testimonies. And then, of course, we have the corroborating of all these testimonies. We have these autopsy reports. And, they're like, okay, well, go to the medical examiner, go to the chief medical examiner, go to El Paso chief medical examiner. And we're like, okay. Because, what name's on there? Ortiz. So the chief medical examiner's name is Mario A. Rascon Ortiz. Okay. Then we find out there's problems. He cannot be trusted. He cannot be trusted because he's illegal. He has violated his visa. He is illegal because he's supposed to be an American citizen. You can't hold a judicial office such as a chief medical examiner or any medical examiner unless you are an American citizen. Why? Because you determine the cause and manner of death. Not only do you determine the cause and manner of death, you are entrusted with the bodies, with the corpses of our people. And you also have to testify in court, and you can do an inquest, and you can call a jury, and you can subpoena. You can issue subpoenas, and you can issue warrants because you have judicial power. And that's why when you are chief medical examiner of El Paso, you make more than $438,000 a year salary because you are a judicial. That's 700, I think it was 753% more than the average wage there. 753% more, times more. So this is, a very important position. I would almost say it's the most important position in El Paso County. And then the DA is right there, right there, um, next to that. And that is being held by a usurper that forced his way into that office illegally and didn't even execute his oath of office and statement of officer correctly. Didn't even do it timely. They had to mess with timestamps. And this is not me saying this, okay? This is not just me this is documented. This is recorded. This is absolutely confirmed that these two most important positions in El Paso are being illegally held right now. Where is Veronica Escobar? She absolutely, this is her mess, because she was county judge. She was county judge, and she has also oversight because now she's a representative. She was the county judge that appointed with the county commission Mario Raskin Ortiz to that position. She's overseen it all these years, a decade. Not 1 year, not 2 years, not 3 years, not 4 years, not 5 years, not 6 years, not 7 years, not 8 years, not 9 years, 10 years going. You know how many cases he's botched already by being illegal? All these people all these cases can come back and say, what the heck's going on? Especially capital murder cases. That's why Walmart case could not go through, because he's the one that handled all of the corpses of all the victims in the Walmart mass shooting. He's the one. And we're being told that he handled Richard's body. He knows where Richard is. We'd like him to answer that question. And Veronica Escobar could absolutely do something. And Bill Hicks, the usurper of the 34th Judicial District Attorney's Office, that is Governor Greg Abbott's mess, because he appointed him. Where is Governor Greg Abbott? This is El Paso. This is where, the Siamese sister city of Juarez, where there is so much murder. It is off the rails murder right now. And Richard is a United States soldier. Where are they to defend Richard? And Bob Moore and El Paso Matters with Angela Kachurga is up to no good. Up to no good. And, I can't say more until everything behind the scenes gets done. But, this is really... Well, it's a good thing that we're exposing it, let's just say, because it's just that bad. When Richard was saying to us, Mom, it's so bad. It's just so bad. He wasn't exaggerating. It is worse than what he even knew, I think. And so the name of this live stream is UTEP. I wanted to talk about UTEP. I mean, there's so much to talk about here. You could talk about Leilani Hart. You could talk about Dallas Hart. You could talk about Tavita Nusa being CID and Richard. It's not just an accident that the prime suspect is a CID agent along with Dallas Hart and Leilani Hart, and that Richard, his goal in the military was to become an agent in the CID, and him seeing things and reporting things. It's that's just not a coincidence. That's part of this case. That's part of this case. So, um, absolutely, we can talk about all of that over and over again. We can talk about Nadal Baim being the father-in-law of Lieutenant Colonel Bradford Bugalo in the G3 of the 32nd ADCOM, Richard's command, and having conflicts of interest with Nieto Jesus Eddie Nieto Jr., who was the not just nobody, right? Not just nobody, but the supervisory director for the FBI there in El Paso, and that his wife has a intelligence position, very important intelligence position there on Fort Bliss, and also even more conflicts of interest. That's not an accident either, and we can talk about that, and we can also um, talk about Major General Eisenhower and what his thoughts are, I would say what his nightmares are right now, since Richard has been declared deceased by the U.S. government. Um, we can talk about that, how he has obstructed justice in our son's case by acting illegally against a whistleblower in our son's case, preventing our son's case from moving forward. You know, it's not a small thing to have a judicial officer that blows the whistle. Okay? That we have somebody of that stature that has information that is so damaging to the institutions because CID was tampering with Richard's case and CID is involved in the murder of Richard, and that you have a whistleblower that, you know, absolutely knows what this all means, to come forward for Richard, to stand by Richard, to risk everything and be retaliated against. And I remember really rotten Angela Kachurga. She's so rotten. Kachurga, does that mean like you upchuck? Upchuck? Angela Upchuck? I mean, she is so awful. Because when we were speaking on a Zoom, she didn't care about what our family was going through, about the issues in the case of Richard. She didn't care because she knows. She has inside knowledge. She might not know everything, but she knows a lot because she's up to no good with Bob Moore and El Paso Matters and El Paso Community Foundation with West Star Bank. They're up to no good. And I think they're connected with this whole YouTube thing. This UTEP thing. This whole UTEP aerospace fraud that's being reported in the news. And when we were speaking, she didn't care. But you know what she did care about? The judicial officer that blew the whistle. That's what she cared about. And she was angry. Is he helping you? He stood up and blew the whistle and said that Tavita Nusa harmed somebody, that Tavita Nusa was tampering with evidence, that Tavita Nusa was giving unauthorized access to Leilani Hart, which is the mother of Richard's platoon leader, Dallas Hart, to tamper with Richard's case, I think that's helping. What does she not understand? But that's not what she was looking for, you see. It was very, very clear. I don't know what she was looking for. I guess she was very, very afraid of being exposed by someone that knows that area. But you see, the thing is I was born at White Sands. My dad worked on the missiles. My mom and dad were in the German American Club there. We lived there for quite a while. I grew up there, went to school there. Our family, 76 years and plus, combined service in the military. We know people. And that's why we are getting this intelligence coming out of that area. And they're going, you need to come, you need to come. Why? So you can bully us and harass us. The very people that engaged in harassing us and threatening Richard, putting Richard's face. Okay, so here Richard is a whistleblower. Here he is declared deceased. And they put his face on they superimposed it, right? With their little tricks. On a recently executed death row inmate in Texas. That's how much hate they have. And, that's how much hate they have. So we've, yeah. So I wanted to talk about UTEP a little bit. Because I think it's very, very important to everything that's going on, because what Richard was blowing the whistle on was the irregularities and the criminal network there on Fort Bliss and in El Paso. And, of course, he complained to Child Protective Services. And we know all about the emergency intake center, but a lot of people don't know about the emergency intake center. A lot of people around, we really need a good journalist to put this together. But here there was these emergency intake centers. And a lot of no good was happening there. 85,000 missing children. And there is trafficking problems. And when I say trafficking problems, I'm talking about narcotics trafficking, human trafficking, sex trafficking, child sex trafficking. I'm talking about arms trafficking, all the weapons, and of course all the ammunition trafficking. And I'm also talking about organ trafficking. I'm talking about a big problem with illegal trafficking there in El Paso across the border that makes a lot of money for people that have signed a deal with the devil and want to go to hell. Really. When you're in that kind of business, I don't know how else to say it. And wasn't it Joe Rogan that just learned recently? And I know who he was talking to because, I've followed him for years, this scientist, right? And Joe Rogan just got, like an earful, like, oh man, God really exists. Jesus really exists. Heaven really exists. Hell really exists. Yeah, it does. And, when you're doing this kind, um, it's kind of like Amazing Grace, right? When you're saved from that, Amazing Grace. And Richard knew all about that. And I think that's what he was trying to help Boleyn to understand. And she just thought, oh, he's weird. He's weird. He wants me to be a decent person. He wants me to have self-respect. He's weird. He wants me to have a respectful job. Wow, he's weird. Not sell myself sexually. He's weird. You know, um, Richard had a great character because he withstood all of this and he has a clean record and absolutely a hero's character. And they just don't have anything on him. Look at how beautiful he was in that video with the despicable Ken canine cop. you know. So, yeah, let's get back to UTEP. Why does this matter in this case? Because UTEP just lost major funding from the aerospace. This is huge. The Germans just left, and now the aerospace is losing funding, and maybe you can think it's because of alternative thinking right now. Um, and I have been absolutely sent um, information of alternative thinking that exposes the corruption within the system in so many different ways. And I don't think that Richard knew about that, but there is so much corruption of misleading people and the paperwork misleading people. And here, documents were lied on that were federal documents, government documents. That's what the news is saying that UTEP is engaged in. It's fraud, federal fraud. That's the bottom line. And that is huge. And there's going to be huge ramifications. And, the president of UTEP is Heather Wilson. And I can tell you right now, she has no character to deal with what UTEP is facing right now. And, she absolutely had something to do with this fraud. And she has very little character. She has very bad character. She has no respect for our soldiers. How can you be there, a president at UTEP, and have no respect for the service member serving on Fort Bliss? And if she can't have respect and empathy and follow open records requests in regards to a missing soldier, how is she going to have respect for anybody else? For anybody else? No, she has an agenda. And she was put in there at UTEP to fulfill an agenda. And that agenda has nothing to do with the office of the president of UTEP for those that attend UTEP, right? Unless it's something really bad. Unless it's something really bad. And, clearly there's so many, and this is not me saying this, okay? This is many others. I'm just I'm just messaging what others are saying. And they want her out of there. They want her gone. And I absolutely agree with them because she violated our requests for open records that we have every right to, which obstructed justice in our son's case. If we can't see the communications that we are supposed to see because we give public funding, and she wants to obstruct that ability, that right for oversight, that right for the pursuit of due process, then she needs to go. She needs to go because she does not have good intentions. That's very, very clear. And now that UTEP, it's spilling over in other areas at UTEP into a federal fraud case that could absolutely damage UTEP. And I think that UTEP will be better for it. They might have to pay a lot of money. They need to get a good president in there and start focusing on teaching. So, and not fraud, right? And we also just, to disclose what we've been doing behind the scenes is we put in a complaint to Austin when she was appointed to the Space Commission, the new Space Commission. We said, absolutely, you do not want her, and we put in a complaint. We are inundated with messages in movies and, in society right now to just let things go. Don't make waves. Don't put the complaints. It's either you get so frustrated that, people call for violence and all of that, or they create violence, or, but they don't want to do it the right way, what the system allows, what the Constitution allows. And that is, you got to keep petitioning. And of course, the Bible says you can't get tired of doing that. You've got to keep doing it and doing it and doing it. And even an unjust judge will give you justice. It's just that powerful when you stay on top of them all the time and watch them. And there are several watchdogs, and that has been very helpful. These watchdogs are amazing. And we absolutely received through articles that they've written and then talked to them. So much help. So much help from these watchdogs. Why? Because they did not just let it go. You need to be on top of all of these criminal actions or violations. You got to be on top of them all the time. Do not give an inch. If you give a mouse a cookie, right? If you give an inch, they take a mile. You've got to stay, and I'm a pretty relaxed person. But when it comes to our son and the murder of our son and the dismemberment of our son's body, the dishonoring of his corpse, and the cover-up of it, we're not letting it go. No. We're not letting it go. I'm not saying to be uptight, but there are just some things that you can't just let it go. So, Okay, everyone, we are burning the midnight oil again, and UTEP, I think, is in big trouble. And I think a step to stay the trouble would be to fire Heather Wilson. We need some good talent in UTEP, some good talent. And anyway, that's my opinion because it absolutely had to do with our son's case, the obstruction that was happening in UTEP spilled out into our son's case. And that just shouldn't happen. So thank you so much, everyone. God bless you. I will be back tomorrow. Um, God willing, and with more breaking information. Thank you. Bye bye.